Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. I think I have to share a worry with you that I never thought that I should share with anybody in this part of the world. If you look at 20th century European history, European politics, it was a fight for democracy against extremisms, against right and left extremisms. It was a century of many wars. We saw killing fields that we would never wish to see. We saw a terrible genocide of more than 6 million European Jews. We experienced genocides on all sorts of minorities. You would have thought that this continent had learned its lesson. You would have thought that this continent had learned how dangerous it is to play with extremism, whether it's about politics or religions. You would have thought that this continent knew by heart how dangerous it is to give yourselves up to populism or to political bigotry. Democracy is all about living in a society with many ideas, opinions, worldviews. Democracy is all about trying to culture yourselves with a cultured view of the other human beings living in the same society. Democracy is all about opening yourself to the conversation of trust and truth. Democracy is a rather complicated way of living because it makes way for many walks of life, and the citizens in a democracy must accept the opponent and dare the conversation. In a democracy, we have to accept the dignity of our fellow citizens. For religious people, this should not be complicated. It's a part of our Abrahamic tradition that God created human beings, and this is the root of our dignity. The other person is also created by God, and therefore I have to accept and appreciate my fellow human being of whatever persuasion he or she is.
But the very fact that democracy seems to be complicated also seems to give way to many easy solutions. There seems to be a tendency in all Europe that cooperation is good as long as it is in my way. We don't seem to appreciate the richness of our many ways. That appreciation we have to find again. Extremism has taken its root into our societies in the form of religion lately. We have to accept it. Again, this has happened before in European history. There has been a lot of hatred around because of religions. But over the centuries, we managed to fight this hatred back, and with the help of secular insights sometimes, common insights, we freed our societies, and the dignity of every human being was helped into focus. Obviously, religion has a potential of violence. All sorts of strong opinions, whether they are political or religious or cultural, have this potential of violence. Human beings carry the potential of falling out with one another and become enemies. We also carry the potential of love, reconciliation, and peace. As religious people, we are, as a matter of fact, called to be living charitable and reconciled lives. We are called to be part of God's peace in the world. A devout life means that a pious human being must concentrate on the love of God and be aware of God's mysterious ways in this world. I can only try to talk about combating extremism from a Christian point of view. Christianity is my tradition. I am trying to understand the world with Jesus from Nazareth in my mind. Wherever I read about him in the New Testament, I find a man, a true human being, who tries to persuade people that nothing is greater in the world than the love of God. He's always trying to turn their hearts, minds, and lives into love. Not alone is he trying to persuade them to the love of God, he is also trying to make them aware of the fact that God cannot be loved if you don't love your neighbor. He actually claims that it is sheer nonsense to claim to be God-loving if you carry grudge and hatred against your neighbor. For many years, there have been many conversations amongst different religions in this country. Some very profound conversations and studies have been carried out by a small but very efficient center called the Islamic Christian Studies Center. Ignorance is one of humanity's most hideous enemies, although I am convinced that the conversion of hearts is the most important thing. Combating prejudice ought to be part of our daily lives, living in a globalized world with many cultures and religions and political opinions. We have to thank all those who actually, at an early stage in a new cultural and religious development, took charge and initiated studies and conversations in this country. For many years, a formal conversation has taken place between Muslims and Christians, and in what we call Christian-Muslim Conversation Forum, the different churches in Denmark have been part of this conversation. One of the outstanding results of these conversations are many friendships, and I have especially noticed that we have started to take part in the feasts of one another. We are gradually moving from ignorance towards knowledge of our fellow citizens with another religion. If you took a project called My Faith, Your Faith, which has run over the scene for some years now in this city, you should not underestimate the importance of such an institution. A Jewish person, a Christian, and a Muslim go and see classes in schools and tell them about what it is like to be Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. They tell about faith, traditions, habits, and peculiarities, and so on. Together they witness about their faith, and they behave as good neighbors. Our municipal authorities have become very aware of the importance of the good conversations between the religions and how important it is to acknowledge the different religious groups. What is of extreme importance is obviously that through this acknowledgement, it has also been important to demand a set of rules, namely the rules of late modernity, with freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and democratic behavior. These common rules are being emphasized at the moment with good reason. We have a common interest in striving for a dignified conversation, a free conversation between citizens with different religious persuasions. The Interreligious Board for the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Denmark, Folkekirke og Religionsmøde, has recently developed a most interesting paper on how the pastors of the future ought to be educated within the area of interreligious conversation and behavior. I do hope that this paper will be of great importance, and I hope that the paper will be received as a think-provoker. I would like to mention the different areas that are touched upon in this paper. In future, they write that we have to develop a contextual and public theological thinking which shall make us aware of being members of a democratic, secular society with different religions and different philosophies and opinions. In future, we must be aware and be able to reflect our own religion and to reflect it critically. We must be able to reflect our own way of being religious. We must show an awareness towards other religions and be able to act together as people of faiths. We must act as people in dialogue and make room for conversation about spiritual and religious matters. And we must be capable of crossing over from religion to social thoughts and to cultural thoughts, and to be capable of the political conversation as well. We must open the public forum for these conversations and make some open space for new insights, and obviously also for disagreement, because disagreement is also part of our political and religious culture. But the disagreement must be cultured and respect the rules of our democratic society. We will in future strive to be able to act in a missional way and present Christian faith towards other public institutions, as well as presenting Christian faith to peoples of other faiths. This paper also suggests that we will have to reflect the new situation of our multi-faith society in that respect, that we start to think about how we will react liturgically in this situation. We will come into situations when people of different faith traditions will want to celebrate important events of existence. Recently, we formed the Jewish Christian Muslim Forum here in Copenhagen. The background was the tragic events of the 14th and 15th of February 2015. In this forum, where the Jewish community, different Sunni and Shia traditions, different Christian denominations are represented, will hopefully be a forum that will be capable of meeting the political public and be a sign of peace and kindness in a society that needs to be aware of a new situation with more religious traditions present in the common discussions. That I hope that our new forum will be a bridge builder between our different religions and a bridge builder towards secular society, because it is part of our Christian heritage also to find many new insights in secularism, which we sometimes seem to forget amongst religious leaders. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and the critics of religion is also part of our theological tradition as Roman Catholic and Protestant Christians. Conclusively, I shall hope with Miroslav Volf, a Croatian American theologian, who I can only warmly ask you to read. I recommend to you his teaching at Yale. I hope that we will be able to combat extremism through a discourse about truth. And it will have to be an open-minded discourse and a respectful one. We shall have to acknowledge that we believe in the same God, but we think differently about God. We must engage in this theological discussion of what we think when we proclaim that God is loving and just. We must also take into consideration what it means to love our neighbors. The more we love, the less we are prone to extremism. We must, as Christians, make a stand against injustice that will curb the extremism as well as the stand against prejudice. Extremism thrives by the demonization of others. We must learn about the truth of the others. We must also make a stand against the compulsion of religion. We must grant one another freedom to believe in what we want to believe in. In future, I'm sure that we will learn how good it will be to share wisdom with one another. When political disasters happen, when extremism is being vocal, inhuman, spiteful, and vicious against humanity, we will learn how to survive by listening to our common values that we realize if we dare to share wisdom. None of us should be afraid of the truth. None of us should be afraid of the insights of a believer of another religion. What we ought to be afraid of is hatred, ignorance, and fear. Fear makes extremisms thrive. Therefore, we should never play the fear card. It leaves the soul and the mind open to all sorts of evil spirits, and might turn human beings into monsters, and turn religions into becoming homicidal. We must turn to the peace of God and recognize one another and live the lives of charitable, believing and trusting people and citizens that are striving for common good, common sense, and in some areas also for common beliefs. Thank you.